ladies and gentlemen. Hi, welcome everybody. Glad to have you all here. It's fantastic to see actual real live people. Makes such a difference. We've got the non-live people on the television screens just now. We'll see them as well. But it's a great turnout. Thank you very much. Panelists who are here, also looking forward to having a chat to them. But to start off with, if I could introduce the Deputy Ambassador, Janneke Vreeland, if she can just give us a word of welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for showing up. Like you, I'm very excited to have an actual event, to have actual people online or not, but it's inspiring. Already the whole event, I think, turns out to be quite a big success, the Co-Create My City. On a larger scale, this morning we've opened a mural painting, which was really spectacular. Some people were in the room that were there. Very inspiring to get people together who usually don't meet. We did meet a lot online. I know some of you have met each other for the first time live, which is already exciting, but this is exactly what as Embassy we hope to do, is to inspire and get people together who would usually, normally not meet, and get to great co-creations that way. I think today, this session in particular, we will be talking about challenges, but in a positive, constructive way. Correct. Right? To talk about the challenges we have ahead of us, because we see the population grow. We all know the big problems that we have ahead of us, and one of the solution ways or areas that we need to go to is probably the circular economy. There's no other way out.
The only way. I
would think. I've been confronted a lot today about my age. I was in a group with students, and we were all about the children are the future. And I remember the days that I was one of the children of the future. You must as well.
It was a long time ago.
And I think it's very inspiring to be here in this room today and to see different ages. And I think that's very important, actually, because you all have your role. As students, as youth, you have a role to inspire and to ask questions nobody thinks of anymore. As more experienced people who've actually things at stake, or wise ideas and experiences, you have to share that and co-create new ideas and work on the future. With that, I would like to, I have more words, but actually I would like to give the time to you, because we have a large panel. A lot of very experienced people talk about circular economy, and a lot of people wanting to ask questions, both online and in the room. So let's get started.
Marvelous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ambassador, I'm glad I stepped down. So I thought I was a lot taller than you, but I'm not. It's fantastic to have everyone here. My name is Chris White. I am at the moment the chapter lead for South Africa, and on the executive team and a director of the African Circular Economy Network, as well as a co-founder of the ASIN Foundation, which is based in Rotterdam. So very involved in circular economy, and really looking forward to understanding the opportunities that we have here today. And we're going to drive it essentially around some of the work we've been doing around the circular economy. So working together with the Holland Circular Hotspot, working with the Dutch government, with RVO, as well as the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, and we've really created a fantastic relationship together. So today what we're going to try and do is just go through our approach. So Holland Circular Hotspot has been at this for a while. We teamed up with them for the Lagos project, which was the circular business platform for Lagos. And that was a resounding success. We had incredible just cohesion around everybody who played a part in that. So to look at part of that, and also around what Holland Circular Hotspot is all about, we're going to start off online with my good friend, and who unfortunately was not allowed to be here today because he couldn't get his visa in time. But Abdullah Mustafa is going to give us a little bit of a, there he is. He should be here, not me. He's a lot better looking than I am. But Abdullah is an MSc engineer. He's got a strong business strategy, management background, and a strong sense of social and environmental responsibility. He's identified as a circular economy pioneer by none other than Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and seeking and following successfully a career combating climate change, and supporting the transition towards a greener circular economy. Lots of experience in consultancy, solar, project stakeholder management, business development, communication. Abdullah, always nice to have you with us.
Yes, hi. Hi, Chris. Nice to be here virtually. Would have been nicer to be there physically, but hey, that's how life is at the moment. I'm going to speak a little bit about circular economy platforms. If we can share the presentation.
I just want to also introduce Hans van Eck, who's hiding somewhere in the back over there. Hans van Eck is a private sector development country officer for South Africa and Myanmar, and advisor to the advisor to the circular economy and project advisor partners for international business programs. And obviously, I've mentioned ASIN. Those of you who are unaware of ASIN, we are a voluntary network of some 100 country representatives in over 31 African countries. So we're really looking at the development of getting circular economy across the African continent. Abdullah, it's up to you.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking just a little bit about, I'm having quite an echo there, about circular economy platforms and our experience in Lagos with the latest launched circular economy platform there that we partnered with the African Circular Economy Network. So to jump right in it, we like to identify or define a circular economy platform as a community. It's basically a community of stakeholders that share a common vision, and that is transitioning towards a circular economy. Next slide, please. Now we mentioned community, and it's important because communities give a sense of support and belonging. And we notice that usually when we go to do a study about circular economy in a new country or region, we see a lot of initiatives working on circular economy, yet they work in silos. So they're usually not aware of what's happening around them. And of course, that's a lost opportunity. Now, another advantage of communities is that it offers an opportunity to learn and share, whether that be resources or knowledge. And of course, communities give the power for transformation, for transforming their outer societies and their outer environment. And that's the goal here. Next slide, please. Now, circular economy platforms act as transition brokers and as accelerators. We usually see that to cope with the complex circular transition, two aspects or two approaches are needed: the traditional top-down approach that is usually driven by the public sector, and then we have the bottom-up approach that is usually driven by communities such as businesses, startups, civil societies, and SMEs. Here we have a nice read about how network governance powers the circular economy. It's an interesting book by Professor Jacqueline Kramer, ex-Dutch minister, that kind of discusses all these interesting dynamics. Next slide, please. We mentioned stakeholders, and we will continue mentioning stakeholders because stakeholders are really the core of a platform, core of a circular economy platform. They're the ones that initiate it, and they're the ones that gain benefit from it. And here we speak usually about four macro groups of stakeholders. First of all, governments and public institutions. Then we have knowledge institutions, businesses and entrepreneurs, and of course, consumers and citizens, which we are all a part of. Next slide, please. Now we have a network around the world of circular economy platforms. We try to keep strong ties with these platforms across the globe, and of course expand this network, because that's how we the power of these platforms is amplified. Next slide, please. In terms of how a circular economy platform is organized, there's no real blueprint for it. We can see different kinds of organizations. Here are some examples of non-for-profits or public bodies or foundations, different kinds of foundations, associations that can act as circular economy platforms. Next slide, please. And same thing goes for how these hubs or how these platforms are financed. We can have public financing or private financing or kind of a mix of both. Ourselves as Holland Circular Hotspot, we do have our public financing, but we also have individual projects that create revenue. Next slide, please. Now we're going to mention some of the activities or services that a circular platform can offer briefly. Next slide, please. Number one, of course, and most obviously being a network, it offers networking and joint advocacy services, so creating events that kind of bring stakeholders together to discuss topics such as new regulations, identifying barriers and drivers for circular economy, of course, publications and websites. Next slide, please. Talking about websites, another important role of a circular economy platform is to share best practices from the region it's operating in. Here we can see some examples from South Africa from the Footprints Africa report. Next slide, please. Mapping potential, identifying priority sectors, and initiating projects. I'm having an echo here. So I think I'm just going to mute myself. Okay. Yeah, this is also some of the services that the platforms can offer on a city or in a region or in a country scale. Next slide, please. And another, of course, offering for that from platforms is knowledge sharing and capacity building. This includes introducing new business models, developing tools, trainings, and researches, and linking students and projects together. And here are some pictures from the recently launched Circular Business Platform in Lagos, a very successful event. Next slide, please. And last but not least, circular economy platforms are a great way to show access to finance by showing entrepreneurs the way to existing instruments and fundings, and through the relationships with public bodies, creating a market pull with public procurement and helping entrepreneurs adapt their linear financial models to new circular business models. And here we can see an example of the subsidy programs from the RBO, the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. I'm sure Hans can later tell us more about that. Next slide, please. Now here is briefly the process of setting up the stakeholders. So we start with a larger pool of potential stakeholders that we then sort and refine and gather information from to generate insights around the platform, try to create a strong local steering committee that will actually lead the platform from a study to an actual implementation phase. Next slide, please. All right, now during this process and this study that we work with along with the stakeholders, we aim to explore basically four aspects. Number one, of course, the specific priority areas and activities of the specific country and region that we're studying. This can be sectors that are considered low-hanging fruits for the transition, or areas in the country or in the region that resemble very pressing issues. In South Africa, that was In Nigeria, apologies, or in Lagos, we're looking mainly here on the waste problem. That was something that was very obvious there. Secondly, we look at the most valuable actors for the transition. So again, who are the stakeholders that have most influence and incentives to actually push this forward? We try to look at the optimal structure for the hub. As we saw earlier, there can be different ways to organize circular economy platform depending on the region. And finally, we try to identify a strong and local steering committee to push the transition to create this platform and take it from paper to actual reality. Next slide, please. Here are some insights from our work along together with the stakeholders. In Lagos, we try to ask and answer questions such as who should host the business platform or the circular economy platform. In the Lagos case, we see that the majority agreed that it should be some sort of coalition between public and private sectors. They go forward with the initiation. We also try to identify the benefit for the organizations taking part. What would they like to see? We can see here that what would they like to achieve through this platform. We see a lot of people looking at collaboration and networking, of course, developing their businesses and accessing finance and investors, mainly for startups and scale-ups. We also speak about how to measure the success of the platform in terms of KPIs. And we did do also a very interesting exercise along with the steering committee using a business model canvas to help us identify the value proposition, the actual services and offerings this platform can offer. Next slide, please. Yes, and here we can see some of the quotations from the study from the different stakeholders reflecting their ideas on the platform. We can see here getting in touch with organizations that might result in symbiosis, people interested in innovation and incubation. Bottom right here, we can see creating collaborations between waste collectors and uptakers. Again, the waste problem in Lagos was quite pressing, though, so it took a lot of attention there. Next slide, please. Yes, that's it. Thank you all for your attention. We usually like to close this presentation with the African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's why we try to push circular economy platforms and aim to assist the initiation of them across the world. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks, Abdullah. Abdullah is going to remain with us online. There's a whole bunch of people online as well. Welcome to you all that are listening in. And we're going to try and make this as interactive as possible. So what Abdullah will do is he will try and engage online with yourselves. What we're going to try and do here is then a sort of a Bushman type effect where I'm going to get a hand signal from the back if there's a question, and then I'll hand back over to Abdullah. So a little bit of a tester with the technology, but we're just trying to look at it cross-platform. So in terms of what Abdullah put across there, I think there was a very good collaboration that was put together between the Holland Circular Hotspot and the African Circular Economy Network. The methodology and the steps taken towards developing a circular business platform for Lagos were actually very enlightening. And I think what we saw there was very much a focus in terms of a specific sector requirement. Waste was the biggest issue. 22 million people in the city of Lagos. Waste is a huge problem there. Even if you're managing it and you're picking it up, trying to get that on the road. I don't know if anybody's ever had the joy of driving in Lagos. They'll understand some of the issues from a logistics perspective. So their focus was around waste, and the specific focus was around plastics. And then we worked with them to try and look at understanding the interconnectivities of the other components. However, working in with the different stakeholders, we got a very, very strong buy-in. We created a strong stakeholder group and a steering committee, and they drove the process forward. We didn't tell them what they needed. They came through and said, these are our pain points. These are our issues. This is how we want to try and bring it together. We listened to them and we pulled something together. From that point, and I think the success of that, RVO said, what we've done here is something quite amazing. Let's put a little bit more money into that and get this platform initiated. And I'm certainly hoping that we can do the same thing, Hans, for South Africa, and take it from concept into reality. But South Africa is a different kettle of fish. Lagos is a city, state, region. South Africa has got a lot of role players in it. So we have a lot of role players in the room, and there's a lot of sectors involved. So it's not just the plastic sector or the waste sector. So maybe as a bit of interactivity, could I get some raised hands in the room? Who's here from the knowledge sector? 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half. You're going to raise your hand a few times. So who's here from business?
What do you mean by business? Industry.
Industry. You're there. Yeah. I've got to tell you what your job is, don't I? Anybody from energy? Agriculture? Construction? Agriculture? Construction? And Anthony, you're also a bit on the construction side, built environment, I suppose? More built environment. So there's many different components to the circular economy. And I think it's going to be very difficult for us to try and pull together all of those different elements and get people to come together on what we call the CEPSA, the Circular Economy Platform for South Africa. So we're trying to engage as much as we can with different individuals. Those of you who we've dealt with already, thank you so much for your time. But I'm going to take you through the process where we are at the moment with the Circular Economy Platform for South Africa. And again, understanding that this is not about creating a Holland Circular Hotspot. This is about creating a platform. So what we're doing is an exploratory stage to find out who's doing what, because there's a lot of stuff that's happening in the circular economy. But there's not enough engagement and interaction between them. We're not seeing the cross-sectoral components of what circular economy is all about. So the idea is to bring those role players together, from civil society, from knowledge sector, from the business sector, from the government sector. Sorry, I should have said government sector. We've got a couple here as well. Very important. So what we want to try and then look at is to try and see how we can drive this circular economy platform, but then also understanding how we embrace the circular economy and working with partners like the Netherlands Enterprise Agency and RVO. So perhaps if you could just pop up my presentation onto the screen. I'm hoping I can see it. There was one here before, and I was going, that's going to be easy. Now it's over there. So if I look this way, you know that I can't see a damn thing. So just to give you an outline, our focus was exploring a South African circular economy platform. We work in collaboration again with Holland Circular Hotspot, with the kind backing of RVO and with the Netherlands ambassador and the staff here. So the idea is to look at supporting the nationwide transition towards a circular economy through creating a platform that establishes cooperation, coordination, networking between businesses, government, knowledge institutions, civil society organizations, and anybody else wants to stick their hand up and says, I'm interested in circular economy. So there's a huge plethora of activities in that space. But this also needs to have an agenda-setting role. It can't just be a talk shop. It needs to have direction, but at the same time, and I think we were discussing this at lunch, it cannot stand on the toes of other initiatives. There's a lot of great stuff happening in this country. And what the idea is not to take over any of those roles or responsibilities or step in those directions. It's to try and bring people together, because communication is essential about this. SDGs, you talk about SDG 17 is my favorite one because it's about partnerships. How do we bring people together? There is not enough space for one person to play that role. We've got to throw away our egos and work towards this for the country, because there are so many different things we can do together. So when we started looking at the rationale, it really was about what is this circular economy platform? And again, we're not being prescriptive. We're coming out here and saying, what do you feel that it needs? How will the platform enable the circular economy? and how will it pull different people together? So why this circular economy platform, and what is it? And again, not to be prescriptive, we want to try and bring people together to say this is what we want, and then build that platform together. And I've got the slide thing. See, I forgot. Whoops. So the aims, roles, and impact. Effectively, we want to support South Africa in its transition to a circular economy through establishing this platform. We're calling it SEPSA, South African, the Circular Economy Platform for South Africa. Again, to facilitate cooperation, coordination, and networking between businesses, government, and all the different role players. But also to have that agenda-setting role to make sure that there's a coordinated and demand-driven approach towards driving local entrepreneurship, looking at SMME development, creating jobs, stimulating thought processes, innovation, and projects on the ground. And there are, as I said, there are many initiatives being implemented locally. So what we need to try and do is to make sure they're not working in isolation. How do we bring together those different partners? Again, specifically to look at that multi-sectoral approach. How do we bring those sectors together? Otherwise, we're going to potentially lose some of these initiatives, and they're going to be less impactful and less investment-friendly if we don't have the systemic approach to try and bring all these different components together. So it's essential that we work together. The methodology is very simple. So what we're doing here is we engage all stakeholders. So we have a large list of stakeholders that we've identified. If you're not on the list, please don't get annoyed. I think the ASIN as a team with HCH, we put as much as we could into trying to figure out who is out there. It's going to grow all the time because every time we keep looking, it's, oh, we forgot so-and-so. So yeah, if you feel that you've been left out or nobody's contacted you yet, go, wait, we're over here. So we then rank them, and I think that's very important because there are thousands of role players. If we look at the Lagos approach, in the Lagos approach, we had 145 total identified partners. And that included the recyclers, that included some of the collectors, that included some of the processors. If we had to do that in this country, we'd have a list of over 3,000. So we've got to be very careful in terms of who we can engage with, not because we don't want to, but because Hans was a bit stingy with the budget and the timeline. So we've got a certain amount of time in which to try and pull all this information together. So the idea is to look at those with the greatest influence and interest and pull them together to get those main ideas together. It doesn't mean we're going to exclude everybody. As this project develops, we'll be bringing in more and more people into the system. Then we go through surveys. Some of you may have had those already. Online surveys, workshops. We've had our first online workshop. And again, using different processes there to gather information. The next stage is looking at interviews, steering committees, mapping the needs, defining resources, and moving forward. And I'll touch on that on the way forward. But if we look at where we are now, I mean, essentially what we're seeing already is that the people we're engaging with are saying, yes, we want to play a leadership role in that organization. And we're not asking people to leave their jobs. We're not asking them they're not looking for a salary. It's about trying to see the platform as something that's going to add value to what they're doing already. So bringing in the resources, the knowledge, the capacity, to be able to just assist. And would they be willing to allocate resources there? And we actually got a resounding response there. And again, it's not just financial resources. The first thing you never ask people for is money. You ask for time. This is about time. We need people's expertise and bring everyone together into that room. And again, we saw that there was very much in terms of what type of organization should run the platform. At this stage, we're seeing also that private sector push. I think that we need to look at, again, once we get everybody together, understanding which route we take. Are we going to go public-private partnership? Is it a private sector organization? Are we going to create a new organization, or are we going to link it into an existing organization? Again, the idea is not to develop something new that's going to step on toes. It's to find out what's there. Where are the powers? Where can we inject energy into that? So there shouldn't be any threats in terms of what we're looking at. So we looked at a number of different questions. The one that came out was, should the SEPSA be a regional or a national initiative? That's a very difficult question. So if you take Johannesburg and compare that to Lagos, I mean, you're looking at, again, multiple different components. But there are different elements of importance in the Gauteng area than there may be in the Eastern Cape or the Free State. So do we need to look at regional and national initiatives? The thought process at this stage is that let's just get the thing together. We can then start looking at regional opportunities that then feed through. Excuse me. Who's responsible for running the circular economy platform? What services will it offer? Who's going to benefit? And then start going through the opportunities in terms of institutionalizing it. What type of legal entity is going to be suitable for representing that SEPSA? And then how do we measure the performance? Because it can't just be a talk shop again. So we need to understand, is it creating business linkages? Is it unpacking job opportunities? Is it aligning sort of corporates with enterprise development programs? So there's got to be some level of measurement. Otherwise, we're just talking. And that's going to be important to determine that as well. So we had a number of different, sorry, this is a bit small on here. We had a number of different outcomes in terms of asking what services are there. So there's a number of different opinions, and again, this is not finite as this gets unpacked through the interviews. So I'm going to have to look this side because I can't see a thing over there. Sharing concepts, knowledge, advocacy, education, obviously. Transparency in value chains, database sourcing, catalog, showcasing pilots, matchmaking, business platforms, profiling and networking, scaling circular economy solutions, uptake of best practices, looking at funding opportunities, addressing market analysis, education, awareness raising, and of course the all-important sort of advisory type role. But then also, what are the priority areas? And here we see the difference in terms of what we're looking at, because now we've got transport and mobility, urban planning, built environment, construction and green tech, water, energy, renewables, energy efficiency, food and agriculture, waste management, manufacturing, the employment generating sectors, looking at supply chain, design, packaging, plastics. So there's a huge volume of different sectors and interest areas that we need to unpack in terms of this particular application. So really where we are at this stage is that we've gone through, the ASIN team have done an inception report, and we've done a workshop report. Now we're in the process of looking at the interviews. Those of you in the room have already accepted. Thank you very much. And we'll be running through that over the next couple of months. But then it's about engaging a steering committee. We want people to come on board and help put this thing together. It's not about the African Circular Economy Network doing it. It's not about the Dutch government doing it or Holland Circular Hotspot. It's creating something the country can see value in and can use. And then from there, we will look at delving deeper into mapping the needs, the deliverables, the KPIs, and the outcomes, and then define the resources to sustain the platform. So there's different ways we can look at that. There's a lot of resources we have available, but also to look at external resources. And then let's get it launched, let's get it moving. And that's where we are in Lagos at the moment, is that we're looking at that initiation phase. There's a lot of excitement about what's happening. It's already created huge opportunities. So again, we're not there to step on toes. It's about trying to see how we can bring all the different components together. And that's what it's all about, is to bring in the different role players. So I look forward to you engaging with us. And as I said, if you feel you should be on the list and nobody's contacted you, please hunt me down after this, and I'll gladly add you to the list. So to take this slightly further then, what we really want to try and do is look at getting some questions from the audience. I'm not sure if we have any at the back. Abdullah, have you got any questions coming through? Any questions?
So far, no questions, Chris.
Nothing yet? Any questions from the floor? We'll do that for about 5 minutes. Any issues, concerns, applause? Nothing. Yes, Anthony.
In Lagos, party politics, was that a big issue?
Not really, no. We actually found quite a lot of synergy with regards to the different government agencies. So the party politics didn't come into it because we were dealing with the authorities as opposed to politicians. So we were talking to the Lagos Waste Management Authority, LOMA, I can't remember all of them, Abdullah. So there was about 10 or 11 of the government agencies that we worked with, and there was never any ego, there was never any politics behind it. It was what is best for the country, for that region and for the city. So absolutely not. That was really, really quite refreshing. Yes, question in the back there? Your name is?
Sorry?
Your name?
Spoo.
Spoo.
That's it. Thank you. Just to get a sense from the men working on the ground, as the collector and so forth, what sense did you get between, I mean, their sentiments between doing it for the environment or for commercial gain? If you were balancing the two, where would you say their energy, what was driving their daily life or quality the festival?
In Lagos, I think that the biggest issue we saw was the frustration from the informal sector in terms of not being heard. And I think we have a similar issue here. The reality is that the infrastructure development is not sufficiently developed within the Lagos area, and there's a need to create that supply and demand. They're happy to go out and collect it. They want a fair wage for it, obviously, and that's the key issue, and they want to have some say in that. They don't have an EPR in Lagos at the moment. I think they are working on that. But the idea is to ensure that there's an understanding. In Africa, the informal collector are the cornerstone of getting materials into the system. So we need to acknowledge that. But the opportunity is also to look at engaging with some of the different projects that are happening there. And there's some awesome stuff happening in Lagos where the responsible corporates through the likes of there's an agency there that incorporates all the main bottlers. I can't remember the name of it offhand. I keep hoping Abdullah's going to shout at me the name. But what they're doing is they're working with different organizations that are working with the collectors, not only in terms of the collection, but upscaling them into becoming processors. So this is through something called GBOs, which is the Garbage in Value Out Centers. Fantastic type of program. And again, that's supported by a lot of the industries because that's driving and pushing the content and the quality of recycling that's coming into the system. So you have this catch-22 where you cannot invest into the infrastructure if you don't have the source. And you can't collect the stuff if there's no infrastructure. So you've got this catch-22 the whole time, and that's very important in terms of driving a consistent growth in that sector to make sure that the two ends meet and that there's equitable interest coming out of both. Thank you, Stu. Yes, dear.
What is the difference between the concept of recycling and the circular economy?
Big difference.
Please.
Big difference. Thank you. Thank you for asking that. I was told for years I was the recycling guy. It used to drive me insane. So recycling, if you look at it from the pure definition, could be a number of things. So collection is one component. Okay, sorting is another component. Processing is another component. So recycling is a value chain. Circular economy is very different. It incorporates that as part of it, but circular economy is more about the impacts and the outcomes. So what you're looking at is developing those value chains and creating those outcomes. So circular economy is not just about saying we're going from plastic to plastic or we're going from that product to that product. It's understanding the social impact, the environmental impact. It's looking at the incorporation of that into new economies. It's looking at creating circularity in different product developments, but it's also about understanding the multi-sectoral approach. So we know that plastics can be used in infrastructure. Plastics can be used in building. They can be used in roads. They can create energy. They provide opportunities in terms of health and quality of life and environmental impact and tourism. And that's what circular economy is all about. It's about understanding the bigger picture and looking at all of those different impacts in that value chain. So, I mean, I've done thousands of presentations, and I try not to mention the word recycling once, because everyone thinks circular economy is just another buzzword for recycling. It's not. The waste component of it is a huge component of the circular economy, transitioning where resources become back into the system. But it's not about recycling, because recycling is a bit broken at the moment. But we know that understanding the different components as to how we bring that together, we can make a change. Good question. Mr. Stein.
Chris, I don't want to talk in circles, but
Leave.
I think what is important for me is there's so many of these platforms, so many collaborations, so many.
Mm.
And I think we all say we need to collaborate. You mentioned the word, it's not a talk show. Hopefully not, because
Hopefully.
really, we need to really come up with action plans that are workable, sustainable, that creates a difference.
Mm.
So how's this one going to be different? Like we had a discussion 2 days ago, CSR is doing this whole big
Yep.
discussion around who's doing what, where, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I was quite amazed at how many people are doing stuff,
Yeah.
but are we doing the right things?
Yeah, and I think that communication is important as part of that. So the communication is a key element to driving it forward. So talking, unfortunately, is part of it. Dope, you know me, my focus is projects. I'm done with talking. So my focus is getting projects on the ground, and that's why I'm working across Africa at the moment. But it's essential for us to bring together that level of communication. But the beauty of the what we're saying about the circular economy platform is that it needs to be action-based and outcome-based. So there's key deliverables, there's key outcomes. And that's very difficult to do from an institutional perspective. If we go to some of the leaders, Green Cape, CSR, and we go through and we say, this is what we want you to do, they're going, hang on a second, this is our plan over here. What you want to try and do is create something where everybody fits in. And we start looking at the different opportunities that creates those linkages. So it's got to be outcomes-based. It has to be. If it's not outcomes-based, I want no further part of it. The reality is that there's too many talk shops. But it's also understanding and getting that message out there. So I don't know, is that 2 questions? I have 2 minutes.
2 questions.
2 questions. Abdullah, you got some questions for me?
Yes, Chris, and sorry if I'm not jumping in time. I'm having a little bit of delays from time to another, and you're just so faster than I am. Anyways, we have 2 anonymous questions from the audience. First one is, when will the SEPSA be launched? And I guess if that depends on the people in the room, that depends on the stakeholders. As we mentioned, the more cooperation, the more enthusiasm we see, the more insights we can gather and have a better idea of this and be able to, hopefully. The other question, how will the work platform such for South Africa plastics back?
Can you repeat that, Abdullah? You broke up a little bit.
Second question is, how will that work this organization from South Africa plastics?
Sorry, you broke up again. So I'm assuming you talked about SEPSA and Plastics Pact and Green Cape and other components.
Yes, the question is, how are these initiatives are going?
Is that it is about coordination and communication and collaboration. But at the end of the day, that needs to come through one voice. So whoever that implementing institution is, it might be a new institution, it might be empowering an existing institution. But the opportunity is to make sure that the outcomes of that SEPSA are not for the benefit of that particular individual organization. It needs to be there for the benefit of South Africa, and that's the focus. So it's not an institutional benefit, it's not a knowledge institute, it's not a private sector, it's for the benefit of the country. And that will come with strict terms of references and conditions, particularly in terms of looking at the secondary term funding. When are we going to launch it? So we'll probably come out with the final report, I would say, by March. Hopefully we can launch the platform, I would say, a month or 2 after that, and probably engage into the next phase by the middle of next year, I would think. Okay, no other questions from there? Yes, one more.
Maybe for my ignorance, if it hasn't been clear, but
We're all ignorant here, don't worry.
What's the Netherlands' interest in Africa in investing this time and energy here?
Good question. Good question. Very good question. So I've said the same thing. I said this is not an orange initiative. This cannot be seen as a Holland Circular hotspot. It cannot be seen as a Dutch system. And they're right behind me. They know that they need, in order to be able to look at promoting Dutch businesses, to be able to have something where they can actually go to one central point, sink the teeth into it and say, where can we work together? But that will also be open to everybody else. So they have not said this is going to be a Dutch thing at all. If we want to bring in our friends from Citra or GIZ or the European Union or anywhere else, they're more than welcome. But the idea is that we need this collective. Dutch business will ultimately, hopefully, benefit from it, but as will everybody else. So they're the ones taking the bull by the horns and saying, let's fill that gap. So kudos to them for that, but it's not, this isn't an orange affair. Yeah, it's definitely, it's a South African thing. They're just putting their hand in the pocket to say, let's give you a hand. Okay. Thank you. So I think we do need to move on to the panel. We're running just a few minutes late. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the panelists. When I introduce them, kindly step on stage, take a seat anywhere you like. And I'm going to start off with Anton Hanekom. Anton is the Executive Director of Plastics SA, an experienced Executive Director with a demonstrated and passionate history, I may say, in terms of working in the plastics industry. He's a seasoned professional with a solid track record of success, and we all know him very well, with great skills in lobbying, advocacy, and multi-sector stakeholder analysis. Good business development professional also, and he's got couple of degrees behind his name. So Anton, jump up there. We were going to have Mr. Vincent, Dr. Vincent Oja, or Jijo, sorry. Unfortunately, he's had a bit of a family issue. So our thoughts go out to him. If he is listening to the recording after this, we hope everything's okay. But from CSR today, we have Anthony Cooper, who is the principal researcher at the CSR. Anthony, please join the stage. And Anthony has a specific focus on the built environment. No stranger to this circular economy as well, Henry Roman. Henry is the Director for Environmental Services and Technologies at the Department of Science and Innovation. He's got 10 years experience. Is it only 10? 10 years experience as a government official in the African green economy space. And he has oversight of both the waste and the water RDI roadmaps at the Department of Science and Innovation. Last but not least, I think we've got two more. Sorry. Surprise Zwani. Surprise is a technical specialist at the Waste Pakisa Delivery Unit. That's what I got off of LinkedIn. I thought you were the boss. Just a specialist. Okay. And then lastly, Sean Bauer. Sean is National Sales Marketing Manager for ExtraPet, with a keen focus on RPET and obviously intricately involved with PETCO, the Producer Responsibility Organization dealing with PET. Gentlemen, welcome. And I say gentlemen, I've had so much flack for not having a lady on here, so please don't, we tried.
Gender mainstream.
We tried. We seriously tried. So apologies for that. But we're going to, Abdullah, that's up to you. Get all the questions from ladies online, would you? In the room? Great. So I think we managed to give you as brief an introduction as possible. You all have massive CVs. So I'm not going to sit here and blow your trumpets. You're all here for a purpose. You're here to answer questions. And you will answer what we ask you. So the idea really is just to engage. And you know, what we're trying to do also is just looking at the circular economy platform. So in the questions that I ask you, just see if you can try and round that off also in terms of what you believe the platform might be able to bring to that, if you can. So I'm going to start off with young Anton. And Plastics SA. You guys have got an integral role to play in the transition of the country to a circular economy, specifically in the field of plastics. Could you unpack some of the organization's current initiatives in this direction? What are you guys playing with at the moment. Where's your thought process going in terms of a circular economy?
I don't think we have enough time, so.
Short question.
Where do I cut that? It's so wide, and the focus is really on sustainability at the end of the day, but it's also balanced with growth for the industry. So, and we're very often criticized for how you want to grow the industry while there's criticism against the use of plastics. But again, it comes back to balance. So is how do you consider the benefits of plastics and how we use it? But then also, how do we deal with the product right through its life cycle?
Yeah.
So it starts right from the start where you produce the raw material, right through to design, to infrastructure, which is a critical part in South Africa, right through to your broader recycling value chain as well. So our involvement is very much in if I talk sustainability, is creating projects. So for one example is the South Coast project in Amamsintoti, where we work closely with the community, Durban Solid Waste, various networks in the area, where the drive is, the intention is to create a blueprint that you collect all waste. Currently, we do very much waste picking and very selective. The result is the rest end up in the environment. So how do you get the community involved to make sure that everything is collected and it goes to one central point where your normal sorting and selling will take place of the valuables? And then the question is, what do you do with the rest? And that's where I think circular economy is kicking in. Some things you can repair, some can go back for reuse, but you can also create new products that the community will benefit from, be it bricks, pavers, roof tiles, buckets, and it's very much community specific. So what is relevant to one community might not be relevant to the next one. Part of that is the whole idea around polystyrene going into building blocks. So how do you develop that further where you equip people to manufacture the bricks, you develop teams to build with the material, which links to housing, plumbing and everything else that goes with it, which could be potentially come from the material that's being collected. So that's one example. We do a lot of river catchment projects where we work with communities around the rivers to prevent the plastic waste to end up in the rivers. We all know that what ends up in the marine is really coming from inland. And 39% of population in South Africa doesn't have access to waste management, never mind collection or infrastructure. So how do you educate them? How do you create awareness of what happens to the material that they throw outside on the riverbed? And how do we catch it and prevent it from ending up in the river? So there's a lot of these initiatives. There's a lot of education awareness that's taking place with municipalities, with government, with communities in terms of creating the awareness. But what do you do? How do you collect it? How do you sort it? But I'm rambling on now, so maybe let me pause.
Thank you. Do you see a role for the circular economy platform to help drive, direct?
Absolutely. I think it's critical. We see a population growth, so there's more people, more consumption that's taking place, and the result is if we don't fix the systemic problems that we have in this country, we will just end up with more waste in the environment, be it agricultural, be it organic, be it building, whatever the case might be.
Exactly.
So we need to find a way of closing that loop. My concern is that we should not become very purist in the process. Circular economy is a model. How do you apply it in South Africa, and how do you apply it in the context of the different sectors? We seem to think that there's circular economy has a specific cycle. You produce something and you keep on reusing it and fix it when it's broken until you can't use it, and then you recycle it. nothing stops us to use the single-use stuff that we have that can be recycled, put it into a product like pallets, for example, that can be reused. You can repair it, you can fix it. If it's broken, you can put it back into the recycling process. When that process ends, it goes into park benches or something like that. Eventually, we need to consider other solutions as well, like chemical recycling. If that will help us to bring the product back, reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, it will take us a huge step forward. And it will ensure that, and I think that's what everybody wants, is that we don't see plastics in the environment, that we use it for the benefit of it, but that we make sure that it doesn't end up in the environment.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is that because I saw you fighting outside with Sean, boxing over the tea, I'm going to go straight to Sean. And let's just keep the focus in terms of plastics. But obviously there's different approaches in terms of going forward. But I'm interested from your perspective, Sean, being in the plastics manufacturing sector and your focus on the recycled side of things. I think we spoke about design.
Yes.
Is a key issue for driving market. That's a key issue. But explain the importance of the likes of the PROs like Petco in driving the circular agenda. Where are those initiatives? Where's that thought process taking you? And how can you drive this forward? And do you agree with my friend?
I do, Antoine. Well, I think.
Damn.
Look, what we were saying earlier, I think as a recycler, we've got recycling in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Lagos, actually. And just to Subu's question earlier on, it certainly seems to be an economic drive. Most landfill sites are not doing the right thing for the environment, certainly from what we've seen. And just what we were speaking of earlier is, as a recycler, it's important to have outlets for everything. So we're predominantly a PET bottle recycler. But when you get a bottle, you get a label, you get a cap, and you get a whole bunch of other things that come with it. So you've got to have a business that has outlets for everything that you get to. And that's, to your point, I think, about circularity, is that you can't just pick one substrate because there's a whole bunch of other things that come with it. And we find that Petco and PROs, they do a wonderful job in creating systems and helping the process flow from start to finish. But we find economically the best way to do that is by design. So if the product is designed in the right way up front, then everything else kind of takes care of itself. The guys on a landfill, they know what bottle to pick up. They know what they're going to get paid for. They know the weight of the bottle. Everything just kicks in if it's designed properly. If we, who are doing sometimes 3 million bottles per day, if we say, listen, we'd like clear bottles, because Woolworths and Unilever and Coke, they want clear material from us. So then don't design a green one. That's poor design. It's not going to get picked up. So the economics of the whole system work right in the beginning, when a marketing guy at a head office in Amsterdam says, listen, I'd like a pink bottle with a yellow stripe and round dots that are also pink. Then, in a South African context, that's not going to get picked up. It's going to stay on a landfill, or it's going to end up in the ocean. So it really does, for circularity to work, it really does begin with designing something and understanding where its end of life is. And if we all understand that, and then next time we're in the shop and we say, well, listen, no, I'm not going to buy that, then every single one of us is starting to contribute to a better environment.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does. It does. And I think just in terms of the PROs, what active role are they playing in driving that agenda?
Yeah, I think the PROs, Petco has been fantastic in a South African context over the years, just in terms of getting initiatives started. Pretty much what you're trying to do. You're trying to get an initiative started, and it's inertia. To get momentum in anything is, it's like a diesel engine. To get it going, and they've done a wonderful job in taking something that was voluntary. Well, now from the 5th of November, it's not voluntary anymore. It's now
Yes.
mandatory. It's now legislated. So that's changing. But getting stakeholders together, getting plastics converters, and convincing them to contribute to something that years down the line is going to pay us back and make a difference. I think it was a very difficult thing to do and something that Petco have done very well.
Good. I appreciate that. So I think keeping in with the more on the waste side of things, I want to bring in Surprise. So we've been working together, all of us around here, on this Waste Pakisa thing since, 2017. And I think the initiative is fantastic. I mean, we're just getting together all of the role players, all the thought leaders, all of the actors, the players, the stakeholders, to try and figure out how we can unpack this opportunity going forward. So what the Pakisa is doing is addressing plans for sustainable economic development across all the waste streams, not just plastics. I think, that we've a lot more focus on the other things, and we've worked together on several of those. Can you quickly give me the top opportunity that you've identified across the waste streams for circular economic development? What's your top pick? If you had to take all of those 3-foot plans we've developed, where's your money going on?
I think where we sit in terms of, the biggest problematic waste, of course, that's our headache, and that's what we're trying to somehow legislate, get to a point where perhaps self-regulation can work, where the industry through, for example, the EPR, get us, something working. Obviously our biggest waste stream is organic waste. So if you could find better channels for organic waste and better use of organic waste, that could perhaps take us to the next step. I mean, certainly the work we're doing with various mixes of ash, I mean, sludge, looking what we're trying to do with ash, in terms of, creating the markets and the opportunities. Certainly with, through the norms and standards, we're trying to create ease of use as government. I think for us, that's, the number one problematic waste stream. Irrespective of what globally we're trying to emulate. I mean, textile and garment industry, electronics, packaging, with a zoom in on plastics as one of, obviously, the problematic waste stream. So I think where we are in terms of really moving the needle, so we say in government, is, how do we best, for example, put up something that can, for example, work for us? Certainly that's our problematic waste stream. With EPR, we believe that, if everything sets right in place, we believe that the industry at some point will get to a part where, there's that self-willingness, hopefully self-regulation could come into play as a country, because certainly other countries are leading in terms of allowing industry to really, deal what is regarded as waste, what was initially produced from source to where they are. Because, what the colleagues are saying is that when there's a market in the business, that's what we're doing. I mean, with our market assessment that we're going to take out soon in terms of, or what we've certainly doing the appointment for, is trying to determine which have the highest circularity. We see what's happening globally in terms of the trends, but where we are for South Africa is to identify which of those waste streams have a high circularity.
Yep.
We know from conversations what could work for us. We then have a zoom in on the problematic waste streams. And I think that's where I think for us is that our biggest winner is certainly if we can get most of the organic waste out of our landfill. That's, I think, is our big hitter. And then the rest, I think, we then move in, because we're a country that's implementing as we go along. So we do regulations, policy, but we implement as we go along.
And from 2017, have you seen that we're pushing more the circular economy agenda? We're looking more at the multi-sectoral approach, cross waste streams, looking at infrastructure, energy, health?
Yes, I mean, if you look at where we're going with the green products, I mean, remember, green economy was there some 6 years ago. We definitely had some form of a blueprint. We then somehow were not probably ready. But I think now where we are and the look and the appreciation of waste is where we go in terms of green products. I mean, you look at what we're trying to do with ash to bricks, you look at what we're trying to do in terms of plastics in the construction sector, construction and demolition waste, the whole, a cycle for reuse. So those are certainly where I think for us we could begin to in terms of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's where we see the conversations in terms of understanding the problem and the opportunity. Then where's the key to unlock it? So policy, green procurement, supply chain, these are elements that can help to unlock the circular economy as well. So to try and move slightly out of the waste side of things, and I'm going to throw you on a curveball, Henry, because everyone's talking waste, but you're also the water guy. And water is a critical element of the circular economy. So what's happening with the water RDI roadmap? What are the key elements of that from a circularity perspective that we're looking at in terms of transforming the country economically?
Yeah, thanks for that. I was waiting for an opportunity to speak to something besides waste in the circular economy. On the water side, there are various approaches to water in the country. So you've got the infrastructure side of it, the built side of it, but you also have, equally important, is the ecological side of it, the ecological infrastructure. Now, that interface between the two is vital if you're talking about a circular economy, because your nature-based solutions sit in the ecological infrastructure. You don't have to go build things, you just have to go and restore things. And it's important we do that. In Ngeni, you've got the Ngeni Ecological Infrastructure Partnership. There are more than 32 partners involved in there, from government, industry, NGOs, etc. As the DSI, we got a program with SANBI, the South African National Biodiversity Institute, looking at what we call living catchments. So we're operating in the strategic water source areas in South Africa. As you know, we are, I think 30% of the country provides nearly 80% of the water, which is critical to us. The catchment I was in is the Upper Tugela in the Drakensberg. Now, what's interesting there is that particular catchment provides 20% of the water to Gauteng. But the people who live there have no access to water. Now, that's what we're dealing with. So the circular economy is also about the social inclusion of the citizens. It's not just these technological things. So that's another aspect that we are exploring and looking at. Then there's water-sensitive design for cities, for urban spaces, designing them better. So the engineering approach to stormwater is get it away as fast as possible. The result is flooding in townships. So it's how do we shift that so that we also derive greater benefit from that water that for now just flows away, but can be captured and can be utilized in the city. Then there's water reuse. Effluent from your water treatment works can come back into the system as industrial water. It can come back, like in Windhoek, it can come back into the water stream that comes out your tap. For interest's sake, in Gauteng, return flows back to the Vaal. That's the water you're drinking. It's the water that comes out the effluent, out of the treatment works, flows down the river, gets treated, comes back in again. So in Gauteng, we're operating in a nature-based way around water reuse anyway. But people are not comfortable with that idea. So there's also the social aspect of circular economy, where we're going to push you into areas of discomfort that you need to address and get comfortable with, because if the climate models are correct, it's a 4-degree increase for us. We have no choice in many of the things we have to do in the next 50 years. So we've got to get comfortable with those uncomfortable spaces too. I can go on about other things as well, but
but I think it's important, again, from a circularity perspective. I mean, one of the things that's talked about, obviously, is the water, energy, food nexus.
Yes.
And water is a critical component of that. And you need energy to get water, and you need infrastructure to get water, and you need water to get food. And so these are all integrated components, and I think that's what we're trying to get across, is that understanding, getting people to understand that circularity is life. It's about everything, the intricate nature between those. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pass on to Anthony, and again, slipping into a different sector. So the issue around the built environment is critical in terms of transitioning to a circular economy. I don't know if any of you know, but the built environment contributes to some 39% of all carbon emissions that contribute towards global warming. So it's not just what it's built out of, it's the infrastructure associated with that, it's the heating and the cooling requirements, it's the water, it's the energy, it's the food, it's everything else. So 39% from that perspective. So if I would ask you, Anthony, from a circular economy perspective, what are the key one or two, briefly, low-hanging options currently available to mitigate the impact of the built environment?
Thank you. So obviously, being at the CSIR, it must be a technology solution. No. Okay. It's all about people. And I just want to give a little anecdote. So a couple of hours ago, 103 years ago, World War I ended. Now, the British Army actually had a major circular economy going. They, for example, all their packaging was designed so that it was easy to take apart, ship back to the UK so that it could be reused. Except, of course, the troops in the front line wanted to use the wooden boxes for firewood. So it's this top-down. You can't just impose something on people. Now, obviously, in the army, in the war, you know, you can discipline the troops who want to burn the boxes. You can't do that in our environment.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just like the generals decided we needed to have this circular economy. It actually also came from the bottom up. In fact, it first came from the bottom up because the people on the ground saw things that they needed. So, for example, all the old leather from harnesses for horses and so on, they could get strips of leather out of it to make drive belts. And then they found, well, these drive belts were actually better than the original parts. And the number one thing that they recycled was boots.
Okay.
You can imagine in the horrible trenches, those things rotted. So there are lots of opportunities on the ground as well. So it's you can't impose it top down. And there are opportunities that people on the ground surely know. I think I avoided your question.
Oh, totally, totally. That's fine.
So that's five in a row then, is it?
All right. So I think to try and just grill the panelists. Abdullah, who have you got online? What questions are coming up?
Yes, hi Chris. I thought you forgot about me here.
Sorry.
Okay, we have a question, another anonymous question. What are the key contributions of a circular economy for the South African economy? So I guess here we're talking about what are the priority sectors, where can circular economy offer the best for the value?
Good question. You want to answer that? Go for it.
One word, jobs.
Yeah, true. Surprise?
Yeah, I think, you know, while we probably trying to build the market for circular economy through waste, we also at the same time think about what are the priorities in terms of our government, in terms of low peak. I mean, Anthony's talking about jobs. And certainly, we are now sitting at the part where we're really thinking about, okay, 5 big bets. The Africa Alliance is telling us that 5 big bets, textile and garments, through our master planning process, will give us a bit of, in terms of the opportunities and the jobs that we're looking for. We know that now we're moving into the food systems, in terms of trying to determine more platforms where, for example, food systems could be centralized, you know, food donations, how we could then allow, for example, food plans to create, you know, supplementary products, feeding schemes for a national, you know, school nutrition program, for example, that we're running in the country. There's a plug. We sit in government where that can happen. Electronics, certainly, there's an opportunity. Packaging, you know, the excellence and the technology of what the industry keeps coming with is certainly part of those opportunities that we see in terms of circular economy.
So, Surprise wants to fix everything. Okay. Henry.
Yeah, well, we did this exercise a couple of years ago when we were starting our journey on circular economy. And the sectors we identified was water, waste, and energy. Now, listening to Surprise, if you look what's behind those areas he's looking at, it's water, waste, and energy. And water and energy are integrally related.
Yep.
Next week in Joburg, we're going to have 2 to 3 days of potential no water. Rand Water's doing some upgrades.
Yep.
That's pretty hectic when you think about it. Energy. We all know the problems right now, so I don't have to explain it. But energy, we have a foot in the door with the renewables being punted really hard, and it's in the right documents now. DSI is working on hydrogen fuel cells, and we want to build a platinum corridor where all the platinum mines are that belt. And hydrogen's key to that. There are international negotiations around that. Water, I've already explained the water aspect. Waste is obvious. There are job opportunities in waste that we haven't even explored yet. So the job aspect can be addressed. We just have to figure out how we're going to do it.
Sure.
That's all.
Oh, good. Just the second question there. I hope somebody else is not anonymous. You got any names there? Abdullah? What was your second question?
Yes, Chris. I'm unfortunately getting questions without names, but let's assume that they're all coming from our female participants. Anyways, we have a question here, but I think that's more for me and you, but we can also ask follow-up questions to the panel. So, since the major challenge is getting standards in place against new innovations and technological advancements, having standards in place allow for easier uptake of these innovations. Are you engaging with the South African Bureau of Standards or other government agencies to get to these standards? I think it would be also interesting to ask our panelists their opinion on which key government bodies we should touch in this study. We are, of course, Chris, more than I am, involved with conversations with many government organizations. I'm not sure if we're directly in touch with the South African Bureau of Standards or standards or not. Can you hear me or still?
No, you're fine, but you still sound a bit Egyptian. But we're getting most of it.
How can I? Okay.
Watch the recording, you'll see why. Okay, I think I got the main point. Obviously, the SEPSA is about also engaging with government, looking at issues around SABS. I mean, you know that's something I raise all the time. Looking at making sure that we've got procedures, protocols, standards, certification, compliance to get products into market and make sure that it happens, and then drive it with policy, green procurement. So definitely, they're all involved. We have written to SABS, but I don't think we've had a response. But obviously, we've got many of the government departments that we're engaging with, DSI, Pakisa, DFFE, all here, and a few others. So it has been, we're getting a lot of good influence and a lot of good input from government here, which is fantastic. There was a question in the room here? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Thierry Riesler from Aspen and BHP. The question for Henry, because I like the water approach also, circular economy topic, and in particular the water sensitive urban design approach that you mentioned. I'm also personally a big advocate for that. Also things in South Africa seems to move a bit slower. I mean, the service delivery is problematic, so we're mostly trying to fix in our urban environment those infrastructures, those existing infrastructures, mostly solving them, I guess, also in a traditional way. Well, water-sensitive urban design approach also asks for a different approach, using nature-based solutions, connecting different systems. So what do you think are the biggest challenges to speed this process up, and what should happen to make it a reality?
So what we've done with the Water Research Commission who implement the water roadmap is we've put in place a community of practice around water-sensitive design, because it kind of, UCT in South Africa is leading on that. So what we wanted to do is to work with municipalities to make them familiar with this idea, this different way of thinking. And if you look at City of Cape Town's bylaws, they've already built some of that into their bylaws for new builds. So when you're doing a new development, you have to incorporate these things into that development. So that's one way. The other way is, what we face in South Africa is you've got engineering principles which are sound, but which say you do not sign off on a design unless you're 100% sure that for your lifetime as that engineer, that thing is going to stand and do what it has to do. It's hard to innovate in an environment like that. And so that is also something we need to consider and look at, is how do we influence municipalities to take that risk? Because we don't know, in some of the instances, we don't know when we put this innovation in place what the potential unintended consequences may or may not be. So it is something we need to pilot, but we cannot get into that perpetual cycle of piloting and demonstrating. We have to move, we have to have a system. That's where it's a system again across government. Because as DSI we can do the innovation, but we cannot, we need the DWS to say, thou shalt do this, and COGTA to do that, and then we can start seeing change. But it's, like I said, it's also the engineering fraternity that needs to relook at maybe how we do this in a good way that doesn't put someone's livelihood at risk at the same time. I hope that answers you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes, sir?
I think my question is kind of connected because I was going to ask, for example, for me,
Sorry, could I ask you just to speak up a little bit?
Sorry, I was just curious in terms of the construction. For architecture, for example, if one wanted to put in, for example, put in these recyclable plastics or do the paving, are there plan examiners, for example, at the municipals that would be able to understand that, okay, these don't have the SANS 10400 guidelines, so we'll have to give them leniency, or how would it operate in that sense?
That would be a very difficult. I actually had the opportunity to present to Department of Public Works and the Architecture Institute. I was very stressed about that because I don't engage with people like that very often. But essentially there are ways and means, but if you're asking can a municipal official do that, I don't think so, especially when you move out of metros. Your metros may have the technical expertise to make an assessment like that, but your rural municipalities, most instances they won't. So what you then would require is something maybe like a social compact with the engineering fraternity to give some time at a reduced fee to those municipalities for them to be able to advise them technically around issues like that. Because it's not easy. I mean, the whole thing with PET bottles, filling them with plastic and building houses, no one's thinking 50 years ahead where these things get brittle and then you've got a problem. Later, it's not a problem now. So you need to be considerate of a lot of factors, and the technical expertise even there wasn't coming to the fore in some instances.
Chris, can I add to that maybe? Innovation is also a very expensive activity, and I don't think we always have the funding and the support for that. So the bricks that you refer to, it's an industry initiative, and it's driven by a company. They've done the internal test and it meets all the standards according to the SABS. But it's limited. The process is very slow. So we need to look at systems in a circular economy where there's both support as an incentive for companies to do things or for communities, but also investment. So the things go hand in hand. We don't get off the ground because we talk a lot. And we have good plans, but when we need to implement, it falls flat because there's no funding, there's no support for that. So one can do much more and link much more of these various sectors together, but you need that enabling environment, you need the financial support for that. And financial and resources. We don't often have the right people at the right levels in order to drive through what has been agreed and what has been proposed. Rural municipalities, for example.
We find, just to add to that, Anton, we find, for example, the projects you speak of, so when you get a PET bottle, the raw material that you extrude to make panels that can be used for low-cost housing is ultimately your label, your sleeve, and your cap. Your cap is either HD or polyprop. So that's the raw material that's used for those kind of projects. And what we find is standards are a bit of a challenge. So if you got, let me give you an example. If you go to the US, it's an FDA that you have to reference. If you go into Europe, it's REACH compliance. If you go to the UK, they're kind of figuring out their own REACH now after Brexit. So when it's coming to the recycled environment, or recycled plastics and resins, there's no like global standard. There's different standards in different parts of the world that just really can be a bit confusing. So if that is a real value add, if you were to, in terms of a coordination perspective and a circular economy that works in every country market, if you could get some kind of standard that's accepted globally, you would find that we would be able to use a lot more of these.
Are those standards very different?
Very different.
Very
yeah.
different. Well, the one we have in Africa is it's actually got a really bad abbreviation. It's called ARSO. So African Regional Standards Organization. They need to change that. But there again, there's no communication between those standards and South African standards and Kenyan standards and other standards. So it is complicated. So you had a question?
Yes. My name is Emil Hanekamp. I'm from Partners for Innovation, a Dutch consultancy and project development company. And we have recently bought a pallet factory in Port Elizabeth, which we are now refurbishing. And we would like to connect, let's say, the energy and the water crisis by clearing alien invasives and converting those alien invasives into fuels, can be liquid fuels or solid fuels. How can I collaborate with you in order to get, let's say, kind of compensation for that clearing? Because we know that with that factory alone, we will save about 5 million cubic meters of water per year. We have studies that prove that from Stellenbosch and Utrecht University that show that for every hectare that we clear, we save about 3,600 cubic meters of water. We know that there is the Working for Water program and the Working for Fire program. I think the South African government spends about $100 billion on that annually. We don't get paid anything for that clearing. So how can you help me and I can help you saving some water?
Who's that question directed at? Who's going to answer that?
I can give advice because we don't actually work with those programs. But the people who do the Working For programs that sit with DFFE and NRM, they also they've also explored other alternatives to the invasives, such as fireproof buildings, etc., that they can make the buildings out of the materials. But in terms of the alien invasives, I can give you some names afterwards who you can talk to.
Surprise, last comment.
Yeah, I think if gentlemen could then get into contact, I think, with us, certainly because we're not only looking in terms of public facilities, we also do move into where there's an opportunity for us to then do such programs. Because for us, it's all about the expanded public works program. I mean, the jobs on the ground, continuity, and so forth. So the work, there's always need for the work. You know, yes, the value for money sometimes a bit massive because there's a middleman who facilitates the actual work. But I think also maybe can I also ask my colleague Michelle to maybe assist because there's now we internal discussion around the whole permitting consideration of it being waste, biomass, you know, so we're still internally trying. But we have options where we're not saying license, but where we could potentially exempt you from actually obtaining any form of...
Perfect. Yeah. So, see? Circular economy, connections, partnerships. Sorry, we're out of time, so I'm going to ask if anybody got a couple of questions. Sorry? Yes, but we're a little bit out of time. If we can just close off. If you've got questions, please feel free to stay behind afterwards, and we can have a chat. But I do need to close up just in terms of the program. So I would like to thank everybody for being here. Thank you very much for hosting us and for putting up this fantastic venue. Really been great. To the Egyptian rapper on the other side, my trusty partner, thank you very much. Always Abdullah, great working with you again. And thanks for moderating.
Thank you, Chris.
Online. To the panelists, esteemed panelists, thank you so much again. Always nice to have you guys here.
Thank you.
And great to keep those conversations going. And to each and every one of you, thank you very much. I would like to thank, otherwise I don't get paid. Well, hang on, I'm not getting paid anyway. Again, the Deputy Ambassador, and just ask one last thing. If any of you think it's worthwhile getting in the circular economy platform for South Africa, raise your hands. Keep them up. I want to take a photograph. I get your names involved. I've got you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So just in terms of moving on from here, there is a trade reception straight after this event, and I think it's on the ground floor. Where is the trade reception?
It's on the roof, I believe.
It's on the roof.
I enjoy a beautiful view over the city.
Fantastic. On the roof, nobody jump. Have fun. And yeah, please, if there's a couple of burning questions, stay behind. The panelists will stay behind for 2 minutes, hopefully, and see if we can get those questions answered, if there's any connections or networks that you want. Thank you all very much for your time. Thank you for coming. And we're done. We're done. You're going, thank you.
People working on
Still has that leadership to bring it together, but
you don't have to carry those things.
maybe that's a circular economy mission that you focus on various priority sectors.